Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this is the iPhone SE for 2022. This is Apple's third generation iPhone SE, and I want to talk about the good and the bad to help you decide if this phone would be right for you. Now, I've been using this full time with my SIM card in it for about 4 to 5 days, so I could get an overall feeling what it's like to use full time as my phone. So I took my SIM card out of my 13 Pro Max, transferred all of my data, and I've been using it full time. Now, the first good thing is the price. It starts at $429 for 64 gigabytes, and some people may say 64 gigabytes is not enough, but it was actually more than enough for me, and that's what I'm using now. But for $50 more, you can step up to 128, or for $579, you can get 256. At that price, I'm not sure it's a great deal, but with the trade-in offers, you may even be able to get this for close to free, if not free, overall. So it just depends on your carrier, what deals they have, and those sorts of things. So for the price overall, I think that's a good thing about this phone. The other good thing is Touch ID. In an era where we have to wear masks at certain places still while traveling or in different countries, it makes it super simple to unlock your phone. So just place your thumb down or your finger and it immediately unlocks. I know a lot of people really like Touch ID. It's something I still appreciate, and in general, it's great to use just for everyday use because it's fast and you don't always have to look at your phone to unlock it. Take it out of your pocket at the same time and unlock it like that. The overall familiarity of the design is nice too. We've had the same design since the iPhone 6, updated with the iPhone 8 with the glass back, and that's a good thing for some people and not so much for others. One thing I found is that it's very slippery coming from a 13 Pro Max with squared off edges to the rounded corners of this SE. Putting a case on it, of course, would definitely solve that issue, but one nice thing about it is when you move your finger from edge to edge, you've got that rounded corner. I forgot about that when I've been using the squared off 13 Pro Max. So that was very nice. It's a nice smooth transition when you're going between apps and different screens. It's really nice to use that. But it is a bit slippery and my hands are huge, so it's a little small and sometimes I almost dropped it. But I was able to manage not to drop it after using it for those days. Now, the overall speed of this, of course, is no compromise. It's got the A15 Bionic with 4 gigs of RAM, just like the iPhone 13 and 13 mini. So it's as fast as the latest phones. It just zips through everything, no problem. You want to open the camera, you've got the camera, go back out, maybe go into the App Store, wait for it to load here. We'll give it just a second. I haven't opened it in a while. It loads, go into music, go back out, go back to the camera. It's just super fast all the time, whether that be for apps or the latest games. There's no slowdown, and of course, you'll be able to play whatever you'd like. Another good thing is the display. The display looks great. It has good viewing angles, and of course, we've had it for a while, and being that it's an LCD, it has no PWM, or pulse width modulation, to control brightness, meaning that it flashes the display faster or slower to control brightness. This phone does not have that because it's LCD. So Apple's OLED phones, the latest 13, 13 mini, 13 Pro, and Pro Max, use that to control brightness. As you bring it down and up, it's flashing the screen at different rates, and that can cause people to feel nauseated or give them eye strain. And so this doesn't have it. You don't have to worry about it if that's something you're sensitive to. However, it's very few people, and about 1 in 10. So even the Pro and Pro Max do a better job of that this time around with some DC dimming. This doesn't have any of that, so it's fine for that. It also has decent viewing angles and goes up to 625 nits of brightness and allows you to use HDR as far as video goes. So here's one of my YouTube videos. You'll see here, if I go into the settings, we have up to 4K or 2160p HDR. So we can watch HDR video on here, just not at its max brightness above 1000 nits. The speakers sound pretty good. So you have one on the bottom like you normally do and one at the top. They have a good stereo sound. Let me go ahead and hit play so you can hear them as well. Now, the speakers overall sound pretty good. They're not incredibly loud, but they do get a little bit muddy at the highest volumes, but they sound good as far as stereo sound, and they definitely do the job well. Now, with this year's iPhone SE, we do have 5G with the sub-6 version of 5G, but not millimeter wave. And you'll see currently I'm on LTE. It will switch back and forth where I am right now. Let's put it on airplane mode, turn that back off and see what we've got. and we'll probably get some 5G, as you can see here. So 2 bars of 5G UC, and this does seem to do a better job as far as overall reception and switching between 5G and 4G as compared to my iPhone 13 and 13 Pro. What the difference is, I'm not sure, but it definitely seems a little better. So let's go ahead and run speed test. We'll see what we get with 2 bars of 5G. We'll give it just a moment, and you'll see we're over 200 megabits per second right now. So 150, now it's going back down. So it varies greatly depending on where you are, of course, but we did go pretty fast, especially for being kind of in the middle of nowhere. So we got 144 there, but it did spike, and we're getting between 5 and 6 megabits per second. I've seen this much higher depending on where we are, but in general, you can expect good speeds from it. But that 5G will use a little bit of your battery, so you could turn that off if you wanted to. As far as the camera goes, well, you've been seeing the camera from the iPhone SE this entire video. The entire video is filmed with the iPhone SE, both the front-facing camera in 1080p, it goes up to 1080p 30, and the rear-facing camera goes up to 4K 60. Now, we don't have HDR like we do on the 13 Pro and Pro Max, but we do have all of the A15's capabilities built in. So the A15 Bionic takes care of the background, takes care of my face, makes sure it's lit properly, and it looks much better than I think most people think it would. Now, we also have great microphones. In fact, you've been hearing the microphone from the iPhone SE this entire time. I'm not wearing an external mic, it's just coming straight from the phone. So if you want to put it on a tripod or whatever, handhold it, or just walk along like this, it looks great. So I think it's going to be a great small phone for a lot of people, as long as you don't need the latest features. So you don't have telephoto zoom, you don't have ultra wide, and you don't have night modes, but you do get portrait modes, and it does a pretty good job. You don't have macro, of course, that's a Pro and Pro Max option, but it does much better than you would think, and I think it's very surprising as far as the quality from the cameras. Now, overall battery is definitely not as good as I had hoped. If we go into the settings, go to battery, wait for it to load here. I use this, you'll see full time for 4 days, and then I've used it on and off. So if we go back here, you'll see on this day, this was my best day, 3 hours and 44 minutes of screen on time, 7 hours of screen off time with a lot of background activity. Now, some of that did complete, but I didn't manage to get better battery life. So if we went to maybe the last day I used it, 2 hours and 31 minutes of screen on time, and then 3 hours and 23 minutes of screen off time. And I used about, 100% of my battery. So it was not great depending on the day. It did not get me through the day most of the time. Usually by about 7 p.m. I would need to plug it in. My iPhone 13 Pro Max will be at about 50% by the time I go to bed, around 2 a.m. So it definitely doesn't last me throughout the day, but if you're a light user, it will. And if you have an iPhone 8 or an earlier SE, it will get you better battery life than that. It just depends on how you use it. But I used it exactly the same as my 13 Pro Max. So all of the same apps, all of the same social media as the key to my car and more. So that's probably the first bad thing for me. Others may have had different experiences. I heard some getting 5 to 7 hours. I just wasn't able to see that. Now, you can charge it wirelessly, but you don't have MagSafe. So that's one of the bad things. You don't have MagSafe, which is really nice. But you can, of course, charge it wirelessly or also through the Lightning port as well. We also don't have the gestures. This is something that took me a while to get used to. If you're coming from a Touch ID phone, it won't be a big deal, but maybe you're from a Face ID phone where you can typically swipe between different apps and things. It's something that I wasn't used to for a while, where you have to double click and go between apps. So switching took me a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but it was something I had to get used to. And then also the control centers from the bottom, not the top. So those are kind of the negatives about the phone, other than it being a similar design that we've had for a long time without a refresh. I was really hoping they'd put the Touch ID button on the side and maybe give us a larger screen. But in general, it's a super fast phone, and of course we'll get iOS updates for years. So it has the latest processor. You can expect to iOS 20, maybe even 22. We don't know, as Apple doesn't say, but typically they'll support their phones for at least 5 years. So you'll get updates for years. Of course, you'll probably need to replace your battery before that point, 5 years out or something along those lines, or maybe you'll get the next version of the iPhone SE. So no issues with that, and it's a super fast phone that I recommend to people that are looking for a phone that's less expensive and has Touch ID. Typically, if you're looking for something with the latest features, I would opt for maybe an iPhone 13 or the 13 Pro line. But if you want something that's a third or half the cost, this will work fine, especially if you don't need the latest features. I'd love to hear what you think about the iPhone SE in the comments below and whether or not you're picking one up, or maybe you'll pass, or maybe get something like an iPhone 11. I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.